Good morning, David. Thank you very much indeed. We are indeed live from Cape Town, and it's been a hive of activity, as you can well imagine here. We've got the big hitters meeting in separate meetings, but also meeting with us. As you can see now, I'm joined on our set by Tshabalala, co-CEO of Standard Bank Group. Sim, good to catch up with you. I have to ask you, though, how many deals have you done here? And I'd have loved to be a fly on the wall in meetings with the guys that you've been meeting. Who have you been seeing?
Godfrey, we've been seeing banks who in many instances are sometimes our competitors, but many times they are our clients.
What are you talking about?
We're talking about exploiting the opportunity on the African continent and how great that opportunity is. The second group of people we've been seeing is our clients, both multinationals who have interests on the African continent and indeed indigenous corporates who we service.
Yeah. What's been your sense of WEF 2013 so far? I know there's been two issues really heavy there. We've got the state visit from Nigeria by President Goodluck Jonathan, and then of course we've got the WEF gathering in itself. What's been your sense of the two events and what they mean potentially for businesses like yours going forward?
Godfrey, we stand on the promontory of a great and new era. A new era is upon us, and it is the African century, is my sense. There is a great deal of excitement, but that excitement is backed up by evidence and by facts. One, our continent contains 7 of the 10 fastest growing countries in the world.
True.
2, from a banker's perspective, finance and banking is deepening. It's projected, for example, that our assets and our liabilities as financial institutions will double or triple by 2020. And so the opportunities for banking penetration are huge and are exciting.
Yeah. Talk to me about what you're seeing at the Standard Bank level in terms of these trade flows. Are they beginning to pick up? And from which regions, Sim? Because we know the Chinese are active and you guys do have a deal with you have a partner in the Chinese. Is it just an Africa-Asia flow? What about Europe? Old Europe, may we call it? What about the US?
Here are the facts. Europe remains a major trading partner for the African continent and indeed for South Africa. About a third of our trade is with Europe. Trade with the United States also continues, and indeed trade with Latin America is burgeoning, particularly with Brazil.
Yeah.
Trade and investment, I might add, with China is also burgeoning as a consequence of their requirement for natural resources, and those natural resources are huge on the African continent. So I think the trends are illustrating the movement of capital, goods and people, and they're illustrating or showing the move from north to south and east to west.
Okay, so that's with
west to east.
West to east. Well, that's with the rest of the world. What about within Africa? Because the stats that are being presented here are startling. When people talk about intra-African trade, we're talking about 10%, 12%. Compare that with 60% for Asia, Europe, and sometimes North America as well.
Godfrey, I don't have to remind you that we as a continent have a tragic history of colonialism.
Yeah.
And so the things we produce are required by trading partners outside the African continent, which is minerals and natural resources. But the exciting thing is, and I heard our Minister of Trade and Industry, Dr. Davies, and indeed his Nigerian counterpart, speaking quite eloquently at the Nigeria-South Africa Business Summit, talking eloquently about the need to industrialize and the need for us to deepen our economies and the need for us to integrate and trade with one another. Hence the talk, for example, of the free trade area.
Yeah. From Standard Bank's perspective, what are you seeing? Are the numbers beginning to stack up in terms of trying to increase those trade flows between the countries within the African continent? I was talking to Dr. Carlos Lopez from the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa this morning, and he was talking about the fact that there aren't many statistics across the African continent, number one. Number two, they are setting up a regional tool that will measure regional integration, which I would suppose would be a boon for companies like yours.
Godfrey, I mentioned that Minister Davies at the Nigeria South Africa Business Forum, and indeed at previous forums, has been saying that a deep conversation is happening amongst the leaders of the African continent.
Yeah.
We are looking at having a free trade area constituting 26 countries, GDP of $1 trillion, 600 to 700 million people. You can imagine that if the authorities get that right, what that will mean for the movement, as I said, of goods, trade, of investment, of services, and of capital.
Yeah.
As that happens, it's a boon for us in financial services.
So what is Standard Bank doing in terms of trying to harness that? How are you positioning yourselves? I mean, we know that you've been front runners in terms of realizing the African opportunity, but how are you positioning yourself then for that potential spurt in growth, if you like, that's likely to come should we realize that free trade area?
Godfrey, since the 1980s, we have been meticulously building our operations outside South Africa. In 1992, by way of example, we bought ANZ Grinleys. We bought the Uganda Commercial Bank, we bought the Malawi Commercial Bank and integrated them into this quintessentially African but international group of banks, and taking advantage then of the increasing and improving demographics and greater disposable income by African people, and the execution and the implementation of infrastructure projects, both of which are of great benefits to financial institutions.
I'm whispering now, are there any more deals in the pipeline?
I think in due course people will see things happen, is all I could say to you.
Before I let you go, the 2-month cohabitation as co-CEO of Standard Bank, how has that been working?
It's been working fantastically, and it's been working as well as our partnership has been working since 2009.